Of the millions and millions of independent musicians that are in this country, 70% of them make less than $10,000 a year. Music to Life has 400 plus artists in our network across 42 states, 300 communities, and they all come to us with this burning desire to be more than just singer-songwriters. So they come to us with this, there is something more that I'm supposed to be doing, more than an anthem, more than a charity concert, more than a march, more than just kind of performative, right? I'm ready to step off the stage and into my community. And unless we can figure out a way economically that they can do that and empower them, with the tools and the understanding and the capacity to kind of find resources to enable them to go back to those communities they're from or sort of be in community and solving problems, we have to figure out channels to income for them.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I'm also the founder of the mothership website of this podcast, over at the Goodness Exchange. At the Goodness Exchange, you'll find every episode we've ever recorded of this podcast and a really lengthy, beautiful article about the guest and their work and so much more than you'll find on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. So I want you to keep that in mind today because we have a really, really special guest. My guest is Liz Stookey Sunde, co-founder of Music to Life, a nonprofit now. It's been a nonprofit for about 6 years, but we're going to get into that story, that's dedicated to harnessing the power of music to inspire activism and ignite meaningful change in communities. Her insights are likely to help you if you just have been wondering what you can do to make the world a better place, what's going on in your community. And even if you're not a music geek, you are going to learn a lot from Liz about how we help organizations in the world that we love, the passions that we have, and how we use music and appreciate music differently. Her father is part of the iconic group Peter, Paul, and Mary, Noel Paul Stookey. And I interviewed him last fall, so I'll put a link to that interview in the show notes on that beautiful article that we're also writing. And that's where we come to today, is this incredible organization that they co-founded together called Music to Life. It is an inspiring and fascinating journey that we'll take you on. Because, one of the things that I guess we never think about is that people who are doing good in the world still have to put bread on the table. It's not that they can just work for free and zoom around all over the world, making the world a better place without the consciousness. And I think that's where the word social entrepreneur comes from. And I'm going to ask Liz about that in a minute because we forget. We just kind of run those two words together and we forget that the word entrepreneur is there. What Liz is going to point out to us is there's all these things that are to be learned by a musician, an artist who wants to do their work, do what they're passionate about, and make the world a better place at the same time. And what I've learned about Music to Life is that it is truly a win-win-win solution for artists, their fans, and the world in general, their communities. So Liz, welcome to the Goodness Exchange and our Conspiracy of Goodness podcast.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I feel like I'm back in the living room. We're talking. It's like we're old friends and we've only known each other for a total of an hour, maybe. But you really facilitate that kind of connection and warmth among the people I can imagine. So thanks for welcoming me.
Well, I felt the same about you and your dad. I knew instantly when your dad was telling me about Music to Life and you're a Vermonter as well. We are both Vermonters. That was a nice coincidence as well.
Yeah, for sure.
That the things he said led me to want to know much more about what you're doing. Because your dad obviously is a musician who has had social impact as his cornerstone for his whole life. And then we're back to this reality that I mentioned in the opening, that musicians have to put bread on the table like everyone else.
Well, it's really interesting, Linda, because Dad and I do talk about this next generation of activism. And honestly, I don't know, activism might also be kind of causing people to raise eyebrows. We talk a lot about social impact because we're not, particularly Music to Life is not here to necessarily kind of break down institutions as much as we're here to kind of facilitate and heal and build bridges and that kind of thing. Like that was very important for Dan and I when we created this. But what was interesting is as we evolved, and you're right, it's like, I mean, we had the spark of this idea back in 2000, but as we solidified our mission, which really became clearer, just as you said, just over the past 6 years, this notion of making a living while making change became really important. And honestly, Dad, it was hard for him to consider that, because for him, I mean, my gosh, by 23, he was a pretty well-known musician. And quite honestly, and I don't say this, I mean, he had the luxury of both being a well-renowned, sort of a highly regarded performing and kind of recorded artist. Of course, the whole industry was different back then, right? So he had his album deals and whatever. And then he could give away and sort of honestly sort of engage in his community in a way that didn't jeopardize, or where he didn't have to kind of sacrifice the food he needed to put on the table, the roof over his head, all that kind of thing. So it took a little bit for him to appreciate that the kinds of artists we're working with now, and they really are. I mean, Music to Life has 400 plus artists in our network across 42 states, 300 communities, and they all come to us with this burning desire to be more than just singer-songwriters, right? So they come to us with this, like, there is something more that I'm supposed to be doing, more than an anthem, more than a charity concert, more than a march, more than, just kind of performative, right? Like, I'm ready to step off the stage and into my community. And these are also artists, and interesting statistic, of the millions and millions of independent musicians that are, in this country these days, 70% of them make less than $10,000 a year. 70% in their craft, right? So that means they're constantly juggling their songwriting craft with whatever else they have to do. So again, it really took kind of helping Dad understand and this is really, really important because we also have a very, very diverse group of artists. So these are artists who are coming to us from all walks of life, all generations, as I mentioned, all geographies. And if we want to see musicians be true, as you said, sort of social entrepreneurs, like really thinking of thoughtful solutions for their communities, they're coming from these communities in need, and we want to get them into those communities. But unless we can figure out a way economically that they can do that and empower them, with the tools and the understanding and the kind of the capacity to kind of find resources to enable them to go back to those communities they're from, or sort of be in community and solving problems, we have to figure out how, channels to income for them, right? Because otherwise we have communities that are hollowed out of their creative, because the artists are just going to go find how to make money, right? Elsewhere.
Right.
So yeah,
they're going to go to Nashville or Austin.
Sure. Exactly. And
Right.
they might still, and we have plenty of artists that go on tour, but the key is we're helping them build this whole other kind of aspect of their portfolio that helps them see opportunities for building programs that will return value to the community.
So this is a really foundational part of the public, me, and everybody who's listening to this, understanding how the system works. Because we look at a group like Peter, Paul, and Mary, and we don't think of them as like ordinary folks who, have to put bread on the table. We're just mesmerized by the message, and their music sends us somewhere else. And, we're on this funny journey with them, never really thinking about the realities. And the same if you absolutely love a particular rap artist that speaks to your soul. And the same if there's an oboist or a cellist, it's the way music works. If it speaks to our soul, it's sort of taking us on a journey, and we forget that the person creating that is on their own journey and has the same needs that we do.
Right, absolutely. And not taking away from the artists certainly that we work with, we screen them for talent first and foremost. They're incredible.
Okay.
And they are making music in the world and performing in the world and touring in the world. And they would identify even the percentage that can only make a little bit from this music, they would say, if given a choice, just about 100% of them would do music full time. And again, we screen for the talent first and
Well,
foremost.
let's give people kind of an idea, because you told me about your cohort the other day when we were having our pre-call. This is a diverse group of artists.
It's an incredibly diverse. I mean, I think we've tried to harness it in, but yeah, it's something like 39 genres. I think certainly over 50% of our artists are artists of color, for a variety of different backgrounds. And again, I said like 42 states and 300 communities. What I love about this work, and what I think will resonate with folk, and everybody's got a dream. Yeah. I think. Yes. They might not be able to kind of keep it out in the open, or sort of express it, but they've got it inside. We dare the artist to dream, right? We dare them to come to us with this idea, and we help them make it a reality. So, I mean, there's so many stories. Okay. But so Greg Mesa, right? You mentioned classical music. So Greg comes to us, San Antonio based, and I think he lives in California now. Greg comes to us, concerned about the gun violence issue. Not that people should, I mean, he's from Texas. He's like, fine, like have your gun. That's okay. But violence against children, violence in communities that really don't need more violence. Like this is not good. So he's a classically trained percussionist, and he brings to us this idea that he would like to take decommissioned firearms and turn them into percussive instruments. So, and he'd like to do this. He'd like to, create kind of orchestral pieces through this. He'd like to create installations in kind of large spaces, maybe even mobiles, to kind of experiment with the kind of sound and the, how wind blows through them, but also how they interact. And so we, through our training programs, take that idea and help turn it into something that is feasible, right? That we're like venture capitalists, artists that come in. And so by the end, he's got a business plan, right? He understands how he's going to pitch this concept to different orchestras so he can do demonstration projects. And he just wrote to us recently. I think he's got something going on in the fall, but we continue. That's the other thing about our artists. Sometimes with these incubators or these accelerator programs, this is true in any accelerator program. It's an intensive 3-month, you get your idea going and then you're out the door, right? Or you do the Shark Tank demonstration or the pitch and then you're out the door. And one of the things artists said to us is, please don't leave us, because this world that we're in wants our music. And so we'll keep doing that. But it's a lonely world when it comes to our change making work. Like we need a lot of support. We need a lot of skill building. We need a lot of, so Greg's going to be in our orbit for a long time. And I can't wait, to watch that unfold.
And then there's timing, like what I've noticed about, because I've been writing about innovators now for 11 years and interviewing them. Man, Liz, some people are so far ahead of their curve and ahead of their time. I'll tell you, the very best TED Talks were done in 2012 and 13. For some reason, if you ever hit a TED Talk that just knocks you off, look at the date when it was recorded. There were so many idea people just dishing unusual, fresh, and full of possibility ideas. Now, I don't know how many of them came to fruition, but a lot of them didn't because they were so far ahead of their time. I remember thinking during the pandemic about certain TED Talks and thinking, oh, if that came out right now, it would just be a sweeping change. So I imagine that if you're investing in artists doing this kind of thinking and this kind of experimentation and connection, finding new ways to connect people, I imagine that you've got to be there with them until the timing is something special.
Well, not only that, but again, anybody that's familiar or feels like they're an entrepreneur or sort of has that dream that they've sort of tested. Sometimes when you test a dream, you go, oh, maybe not this way. I see now. Right. So that's the other thing. I mean, we have a couple of training program models, and one of them is a 6.5 month incubator. And over that period of time, artists' ideas evolve necessarily. When they graduate, their ideas evolve. But what we've done, and this is true, I really do encourage the dreamers out there. What we have done is we've given them a package of skills. We've given them a package of ways to think about their idea, right? Ways to kind of frame and organize their idea that never go away. These are like, it's, it's the adult learners, because we're working with 18 plus. So we do have some young artists as well, but they're all kind of in the world. They're working, they're balancing their jobs, their families, whatever. And they now have this new skill, this new kind of toolkit with which to think about their entrepreneurism, right? So an idea might not go in the direction they thought, but they are forever changed, right? In the way that they now view opportunity and possibility.
Also, I think that there's a learning that has to happen in society, because we all feel like if you're going to do good, you got to wear the same pair of Birkenstocks for the next 40 years. Like you got to drive the same Subaru forever. Why do we have this social expectation that people that, nonprofit founders, there was a phase, you'll probably remember. We talked about wasn't it you and I that talked about Dan Pelota's?
Yes.
I'll link people to Dan Pelota's
definitely.
TED Talk. That's one that I was talking about. I bet you that's from around that time. He does this amazing chat about the fact that we should not expect the best CEOs for nonprofits to make pennies. I mean,
here's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
The nonprofit field, first of all, is I think a $2 to $3 trillion industry. By the way, I mean, seriously, I looked up these numbers just recently. I mean, they range from 1.7 trillion to 5 trillion. It is a major, major kind of industry segment. I mean, it's museums, it's hospitals, it's, it's, you name it, it's schools, it's, all of that. It's an industry where in many cases, it is picking up the work that the commercial industry has not found viable enough to be in, right? So nonprofits are doing the work that the commercial industry has said, no, you know what, we can't find anything there. So nonprofits have to be that much more creative and resource sensitive. And they have this double bottom line, right? We not only have to keep ourselves in business, but we have to constantly be kind of innovating and responsive around folks that frankly, the commercial industry doesn't want to deal with for whatever reason. And so that's what Dan Pelota talks about, is this notion that, for risk, and yet, right, because they are dependent on, taxpayer dollars, or, sort of a public, as you suggest, that maybe doesn't quite understand the sector, they can't they're not able to be as risk forward, let's say, as the commercial industry can be.
Right.
And it's a real challenge.
When you circle it back to the music industry, I imagine there's no end to the benefit concerts that your dad could do at this stage.
Can you just sing this song for me? Just come and do this concert for me.
Yeah.
I love, the nonprofit enterprise community, whatever, is where I live. But yes, there are costs even associated with that. So, yeah.
And, he's at the stage of life where he can pick and choose what he wants to do benefit wise. But your 27-year-old or your 22-year-old that's got some amazing thing. Like you were telling me that you have an artist who's a tuba player who has a big dream. Oh. And tell me of kind of more stories about these folks.
Jenny, I know. We just met Jenny she's in Arizona. Oh my gosh. She's a native artist that wants to bring back kind of marching band culture to her reservation.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
But because think about that. I mean, even if you don't know about marching bands, come on, just find a YouTube video on marching bands and watch their synchronization and you can't help but build community. If you're part of a marching band, you can't help it because you got to move in the right way. You got to lift your instrument up and down. You got to it's kind of brilliant. So yeah, so she's amazing. I mean, there are many others, but what I love is they each come from their own, I was saying this before, their own lived experience where they reside. And they come to us and they say, wait, you mean I can think systematically about this and structurally. I mean, Benny, I think I might've mentioned Benny too. So Benny, is outside of Toronto, and his project, he calls it the Wheel It Studios. It's a mobile recording studio that drives through the outskirts of Toronto and some of the more troubled areas, and frankly, intentionally crosses these kind of invisible gang boundaries, these sort of boundaries of these gang territories, and picks up kids along the way who couldn't otherwise kind of even walk kind of across these invisible boundaries, picks them up along the way and finds a neutral zone. And because Benny's a facilitator as well as a, producer and a rap hip hop artist, he gets them all together and they not only create kind of cross boundary and kind of cross cultural music together, but they also obviously are learning about their differences. They're sort of learning through music to kind of, bridge their differences. And it's gotten to the point, I just feel so lucky to have, but he's one of our 6-month academy graduates, and he's now got contracts with the city of Toronto because what they're seeing is reductions in violence, right, through this work. They've been able to kind of isolate these neighborhoods, right, and sort of see violence go down. And we're actually reaching out to him to do a spring taping of one of his programs. So I'm really excited about that.
That just makes my heart sing. Okay, we're going to take a really quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to hear more stories and learn more about this. Because we've got to talk about things like the personal resilience that you're teaching people and the aha moments. Okay, but we'll take a break, and we come back so much more with Liz Stookey. Thanks.
You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time or maybe even the emotional stamina to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness.
Okay, we're back with Liz Stookey Sunde. You gave me such a beautiful feeling about possibility and led me into this conversation with you. I guess I just didn't appreciate. I love music. My parents constantly had music in our house. We grew up in a house with music. My mom could play the organ. You know the kinds of organs that have the 5 different tiers and you even use your feet? She could play one.
Amazing.
Yeah. I don't even know what
No,
kind of
organs are amazing. Because each pipes represent different parts of the orchestra, right? It's really complex instrument.
Yes. And she didn't come up well. Her mom died at 4 and her dad died at 8 and she was raised by aunts, but somehow she had that in her brain. And I imagine that's kind of the way all artists' minds work. There's something in their core that has to come out. And that's
okay, I have to tell you a very funny story from Dad. This is kind of just a side. Dad, yes, music always runs through. If you are a musician and you're really, working on your craft, you are always thinking in terms of music. So just quickly, growing up, people would ask me, oh, well, so did your dad have all the 60s greats on? Did you list all that music? I'm like, absolutely not. We listened to music with no lyrics because dad was always composing. So he would have jazz on, he would have classical on, he would never have, he and I would sit down and we'd listen to the whole Beatles White Album, right, together. But you would listen, you would sit and you would listen, you would not be doing anything else. You couldn't have background music with words on it as in my house. So that's one thing. And then just more insight into that composing mind. And by the way, that story has been corroborated time and time again with other artists that I talk to. Like they're composing all the time. They're just open all the time.
I featured some of his pieces that felt a lot like poetry to me.
Interesting.
And we interviewed about 2 weeks before the election. And your dad was being very hopeful, and he was just in a beautiful state of mind. And he shared some songs that were so relevant and then shared that they were created in the 60s. He was part of the group that was at the March on Washington in the 60s. So I've got goosebumps again. It's this voice of change that I think probably runs through all the artists that you're working with. Tell us the story of the punk rocker, because I think we also all have a lot to learn if we only love the music from our genre. Tell us the punk rock story.
Isn't that true? So we, hundreds of artists were meeting every year, and then a smaller subset of that are kind of in a position to go through our training programs. And as I mentioned, something like 39 genres. So, but this, for whatever reason, we hadn't had a punk rocker in our midst until, I think it was this recent Academy class. Our Academy is our 6-month training program, our Academy program. And as you and I mentioned, incredibly strong personality, like comes across. We're reading their application, right? So we're only seeing what they print and with the music videos, right, that they submit. And so this is a woman with, long black purple hair and ripped clothes, right? Just screaming into the microphone and throwing her hair around. And, as you and I have talked about, Dad and I created this organization to build bridges, right? To be of healing value, right? To sort of, to be capital I inclusive, right? And all I could see was this woman screaming into the microphone. And lucky for me, I've created, a team at Music Select. We're a virtual organization, so they're all over the country, an amazing group of women of all ages. And so some of my younger team members really encouraged me to kind of open my ears and my heart to this music, which enabled me to then assess the quality. And by the way, when we assess the quality of music, sometimes we will farm out applications to kind of experts in the field. And actually one of our, as it turns out, one of our team members is more of a punk rock aficionado. So it was great. We could bring her in. Her project, however, was what then got me over the hump. So I could listen. Punk it's not going to be my default genre, but I could get through it with her good guidance, which is another thing, by the way, for listening cross genre. Have somebody who knows the other genre well sit with you and kind of help you understand the value of that genre through their eyes. It's a beautiful process. So, and that goes for rap, that goes for any really classical. If you're a rocker and you're like, classical, goes for anything. And it truly opens your heart, opens your mind. It's a beautiful thing. So got through that part. And then her application. So she's already a published author, and her whole social change orientation is creating welcoming spaces for both for artists, but also for fans and concert goers. So she now has developed a training curriculum, and she brought it to us, and she's like, I really need some help with this. What I'm doing is building a kind of a safe spaces curriculum that I'm taking it to venues. I'm taking it to festivals. I'm taking it to anywhere where people are gathered in kind of tight quarters to kind of witness or experience music. I want both the people coming in the door of whatever walk of life, I want them to feel like they are welcome. They're being watched out for in a positive way because, stuff happens when you get a lot of people together. I mean, we're not all perfect human beings. No, people are drinking, whatever, stuff is happening. So she trains these owners, right? The venue owners, the festival owners, to understand the importance of creating welcoming spaces because the reputation spreads very quick and they can leverage that training. They can say, look, I've gotten this training. So welcome everybody. It increases their business, right? Because now people who might not otherwise, people in a wheelchair, people, who knows, come in. So this is the work that she does and that we've now helped her do. So it really got me over and it's she just chooses to live in this genre as she does her work. But it's brilliant. I mean, she's brought together people across all walks of life. It's brilliant.
Okay. You mentioned a minute ago that, and this is probably a great moment to talk about it, given that this woman gave you a bridge into thinking differently about punk. Talk to us about music as a bridge. My brother is a major music lover. He lives in Nashville. Specifically, they go to concerts constantly. He loves all genres, but particularly, I don't even know if he loves. Anyway, I never understood this until I talked to your dad. And now I listen to the music he listens to and loves entirely different. Talk to us about music as a bridge.
Well, on the one hand, there is the impact of music on you as a listener, and you could just have a headset on and you could just be there. And it is a bridge. We've had artists tell us how they use music as a bridge to sadness because sometimes there is something that needs to be tapped inside of you. And it's that, I mean, we've all I'm not trying to assume, but I can imagine most of your listeners have had that moment where it's suddenly out of nowhere. They hear that piece of music and it just, wow, right? I mean, it's huge. So it can be it's a bridge in that sense. It can be a bridge to memory. I mean, think about the song. Well, you just did it a minute ago with the whole 60s. You're like, oh my gosh. I mean, so music from your youth can bridge you back into, takes you back to like viscerally. I know for me, driving my first car, right? With the windows down yes. And like blaring Dire Straits, right? Like
REO Speed,
whatever, REO,
right?
yeah, whoever's yes. Right. So I think dad talks about how music opens the heart so the mind can learn, right? Music opens the heart so the mind can learn. So I think that's another moment of bridge, right? Is music can open you to the perspective. And this was true with the punk music, right? This is true with rap music. If you're a classical lover, music can open you to walking for a little bit in somebody else's shoes. And not all of this is easy. And in fact, sometimes it can be really hard and kind of scary. It can be a little scary to listen to a genre. And this goes for really, truly any genre. It can be a little overwhelming. You're not sure what you're listening to. You're used to a comfort zone. So I guess that's the other bridge, is it can take you from, right, a place of sort of comfort and familiarity into a place, which that's where growth, right? I mean, that is what growth can do. That's a passageway. So it's a bridge to growth, right? Discomfort can be a bridge to growth. So
yes, my husband and I accidentally stumbled into, and then were absolutely mesmerized by the PBS many part series, 7 or 8 part series about country music, the history of country music. Have you seen that?
Well, one of our artists is on it, I think.
What?
I think Reese Palmer might be on it. She went through our program.
Yes. I think that name is familiar to me because of that.
Yeah.
I tell you, I can't express how my husband and I went through that. We had not very much appreciation for country music. Some, we like all kinds of music. You can't go back where we grew up in Illinois, and it's just on every radio station when you're driving the prairie. But that gives you the history of where it came from, the people's lives, what they went through, the early artists that were that we're sort of using that as a vehicle for social change before we even knew that was what people did.
Completely.
So I'll put a link to that documentary in the show notes too, because if somebody wants to understand, I instantly understood what you were saying in our pre-call when I thought back to that series. Chuck and I were literally looking at each other every 5 minutes and saying, what? I never knew that was Johnny Cash's motivation or all the things, the stories.
Well, and here, so Reese, let's see, she was 23, I think, Academy grad. She came to us with her Color Me Country Foundation and just wondered how to, oh my gosh, what have I just created? Because what she wanted to do is create thoughtful channels and pathways for Americana and country artists of color to kind of make their way onto the stage in a field that, has not traditionally been particularly diverse. And she wasn't coming to us again in kind of from an activist angle to kind of break things down. She just knew that if she could create this bridge, she would really kind of open a lot of eyes and ears to kind of what could be, right? So we helped her. First of all, she's also a performing and touring artist. She was like, oh my gosh, I can't run. What am I doing trying to run a foundation? So helping her kind of stabilize that and get that kind of organized so that she could do what she needed to do. But also, during that time, she was organizing, she was talking to festival organizers and saying, hey, I'm going to do all the screening. I'm going to do all the kind of pulling together of some incredible talent. I'm just asking you to provide me with a stage so that I can bring the artists of color who are incredibly talented in this field, but just aren't getting the opportunities. I can bring them to the stage and how can we work together and kind of partner around that? And it was profound. I mean, she's got, maybe I should probably also I'll give you some other video links of these artists that I'm talking about because she's got a video. I think she went to some country music festival in like England maybe. And it's a hoot because, the English are like, they're wearing their cowboy hats and the boots and the whole thing. And not in the audience, not many audience members of color. I think just about the whole stage, right, is sort of black and brown. And the audience members are just kind of in this place of just witness. It's a brilliant, it's not, again, they're not blending. I mean, there are incredibly innovative artists. Gangsta Grass is one of them. They're incredible artists that are bridging genres. Gangsta Grass is like rap and bluegrass. Like it's just crazy. They're not, but for Reese, she's just being a country, she's just singing country. She just happens to be a woman of color, right? So, cause that's the other thing about helping minds appreciate difference. You can't take it all at once. You can't, sometimes it's just overwhelmed. Like if you're going to change everything on me, I'm not sure I can take all this in. But Reese's just a profoundly accomplished country singer who happens to be a woman of color and who is giving you, if you know country, her, if you would cover your eyes, right? You'd know the music.
Yeah.
And so that's the other, that's another bridge. It's another example.
Yeah. And then there's the bridge that happens when something new sort of bursts onto the scene. Not that it wasn't there all along being done, but it suddenly gets popularized. I remember being at the New Orleans Jazz Festival a long, long time ago when Zydeco was the very coolest thing, and so we went to this particular concert because it was the Indigo Girls, and the entire field was just absolutely electric, waiting for the Indigo Girls. And then there was a Zydeco band that played as their warm up.
Good for them.
The audience was literally crazy. It was just the energy. I got goosebumps thinking about it. It was like the energy in a football stadium right before kickoff. It was so weird. Mm-hmm. And then I have to say, the Indigo Girls came out and they were downbeat, of course. And it was a weird juxtaposition. I'm not sure that was a wise business decision, actually. Because the crowd.
That's so funny. Right. I totally get it. Right. I totally get it. That's funny.
But what it did was you could see that the people were in their minds now shifting gears.
Right.
There were people who were there and already knew that Zydeco existed. We didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like, what is this amazing thing in the world?
Right. Right.
So I love that part about music, if we give it a chance, the things that we don't understand a chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking there's another story. So, and actually it happens to be a country artist. So there's Cheryl in Houston, who came to us as the country singer, came to us as the mother of two former substance misusers, as kids, in and out of jail, total tough love. And the songs just kept pouring out of her, like tough love songs that luckily they survived and were kind of moving on to the next chapters in their lives. But she's like, I have so much energy around this issue, and all I know to do right now is write songs. And so she went through our program, and we sort of counseled her around, well, help us understand what your experience was like as the parent of and she's like, oh my God, there's sort of all this shame, and it wasn't supposed to be me. Not, being a little embarrassed, being a little shy about using my voice, because this is such a, there's such a stigma, right, attached to kind of, well, what did you do wrong then as a parent or whatever? And so she very productively ended up creating something called Hope Loves Harmony, which is a music-based kind of healing circle for parents and caregivers of current substance misusers, or those that have kind of gone through that process. And she's now incorporated a social worker as part of that. And she's a discrete program. It's like a 6 to 8 week program. She shops it around to opioid clinics, and you bring it in there. And so this is, I think about the bridge thing with this, because so folks bring initially, she's not trying to she's not trying to turn people into suddenly like musicians themselves, but she's kind of almost counseling, or sort of guiding them through this use of music as a healing tool and expressive tool, because they start by bringing the music just that has guided them through this time, right, to the middle. It's a little like AA, in fact, because they all have to go around and say, I'm the mother or the caregiver or the father or the whatever, the aunt, the uncle of somebody who has been a substance misuser, right? And so, and here's the music that got me through. Here's the music that made me cry. Here's the music that makes me think, damn it, we're moving on or whatever. And so they start with that, and then they start to get into, you talked about poetry before, they start to get into original creation, and sort of, because the pathway has been, showed to them a little bit. All right, I can be safe in this group. So now I'm going to start putting my own feelings down on paper. And Cheryl works with them to create a collective song, which becomes like an anthem to their pain, their grief, their triumph. And by raising them, this is a point, she hasn't quite gotten here yet, but this is my goal for her, my hope for her, is that these people that gathered in this room are then, through this process, their voice becomes more of a confident instrument. Again, they're not going to become, like singers on a stage, but their voice becomes, and they're in themselves, they become this confident instrument to be a voice for change around the opioid crisis, right? So they can now become advocates. They can speak their truth without feeling that sense of shame or I need to hide it, right? It's this like bridge to even another step in their healing journey and the healing journey of our community, right?
That's huge.
So it's good. It's really important.
So huge.
And that's music into
start
action.
Talking about things that are hard. You got to start talking somewhere.
And we were talking about this before. This is second nature. This is the artists, the musicians of our time are giving word and voice, and they happen to have a melody under it as well, but they're giving word and voice to things we don't know how to otherwise vocalize. And so them taking that talent into, like, we have Cheryl's example. We have other, I've got many other examples, but taking that talent of being able, and the humility involved in, I know how to be a voice piece for myself with some of these issues, but now I'm going to put myself in community and be a channel to help facilitate other voices. Right. Yeah. So it's great.
So like the music and the artist and the organization become sort of like a refuge and sort of like a capacity building machine.
100%. 100%, because organization, we've been talking a lot about the artists, but the organizations haven't thought about this either, right? So the organizations we work with are suddenly like, oh, and you talked about this earlier, this is what social impact looks like through music. I see. And so now their wheels are turning because they're hustlers, they're entrepreneurs themselves, right? These organizations, oh, I see how by engaging this musician, not only can I start adding another element to my programs that could be really interesting to the clients I serve, but I can start appealing for different kinds of funding, because we're going to start demonstrating how music is improving these lives. And so I can, and when I say, I don't know how people feel. I mean, you and I have talked about this kind of funding conundrum, right? We're not on the one hand, we're supposed to be doing good and we're not supposed to be asking for money, but on the other hand, we need the innovation. I mean, really, truly what fundraising is it's an invitation to a community to invest in a concept that is going to build a quality of life that doesn't otherwise exist, or is going to address an issue that doesn't otherwise. I mean, good investment, good community investment. And that does, it takes funding in the right, investment in the right people and the right solutions to produce incredible change.
The other night was my birthday, and we wanted to do something unusual, and my daughter invited me to go to this dance lesson. She's been going on Tuesday nights to a dance lesson to what used to be called the German Club in Burlington, Vermont. You know how the North End is evolving in all kinds of ways. And it was a swing dance lesson, and then for an hour and a half, free dance. So what I saw in the dance lesson was about 30 people absolutely on the same page. We all loved that genre of music first. And it made our bodies want to move. If there was just one thing, like, we were from all walks of life, there's no doubt about it in the lesson. And people could dance, or they weren't used to dancing or whatever. But there was that music made us all feel good about life. And then in the second part, that was a free dance, it was like 60 people came out of nowhere. Half the lesson people left, and then these people who just were jittering with energy. Like, they couldn't wait for the music to start, and then just flying all over this great big old building upstairs. It was something, and I really felt like I was in the presence of just the happiest people. And all they seemed to have in common was that music and the way it wanted to make them move.
Well, it's beautiful to see. So I've been talking about our 6.5 month, training program. We also have a kind of a boot camp that we do. It's a live boot camp where we get 15 artists together for a day, and we just do this quick start thing. But what happens is they look across the table, it's virtual table if it's the 6-month thing or the live, and they see a fellow artist, your musician, but of an entirely different genre. So because what you've described is, you're all gathered and you all have music in common. So these guys not only have music in common, but there are a lot of differences. Like, music is kind of the only thing sometimes they have in common, yes, which is kind of brilliant. And because but actually that's not necessarily true, because they all apply with an idea in mind. So it's different ideas, but they're all bringing these different ideas. They all want to make the world better, a better place. And so there is a visceral energy. I mean, we can do it in a matter of hours in our one day. There's and they're all meeting they're building community in a way that just has never been done before, around the table. Yeah, it's great.
What has this taught you about, in general? I mentioned in the opening that folks would have some takeaways, even if this particular niche doesn't feel relatable. Like, what's the advice for aspiring change makers? If you've watched change makers, so have I, and their trajectory and their stumbling and their success and their suffering and their joyful moments. Do you have any advice for aspiring change makers?
Are you saying change makers regardless? Because this is true. There is some universal advice, regardless of whether
I want
you're a
the
musician
universal
or not.
advice, and the folks that might know somebody or might be of the kind of ilk that never knew you existed and would be perfect for your program. Let's go with the ordinary person, the commonalities not related to what exactly you're doing.
Got it. And so, because I also have, and we can link this on your site too. I have,
Okay.
if you are inspired by this notion of helping musicians get into community, I have a whole list of resources for that
Okay,
too.
great.
So
we're going to link to that for
and
sure.
then I have a whole list of resources for musicians that are really curious that this has piqued their interest, right?
Okay, great.
And then in terms of kind of your average listener, because we started this saying we all have dreams.
Right.
We all have some kind of something that's cooking.
Yes.
And honestly, you will very quickly feel defeated if you take it on all at once. So my biggest advice is to absolutely dream big, get it into a journal, get it onto a piece of paper, write it, color it. Like maybe you're a visual person, like get your dream big. Just maybe it's a piece of paper. I don't even know. Maybe it's reds and blues and circles and triangles. Like just try to communicate this bigger piece. And then if possible, and I think we all have this, find somebody near and dear to you who can be the number one member of your tribe. You always need a tribe. You can't do this stuff just in a silo. And that near and dear person is going to do things like, oh, I love your blue. With all due respect, have you thought about adding maybe a little bit of purple? Because in this particular circumstance, I've seen how, you know what I mean? Like you need somebody who's going to balance both the love you, got you, and because I love and have you, so step one is just like throw it all out there. Step two is get that kind of tribe person who's going to help you at least just start to put it in context, because community change it's not an artist, again, in a silo doing a single painting, right? You're really trying to do something that's going to be a benefit to other people. And so the spaghetti has to be thrown on the wall, right? So that's your first person, right? Who comes in and kind of does that. And then from that, I do think there are lots of courses, incubator, like, sort of, some of them are short, some of them are longer, but and some of them are online. But find a way to break your big thing down into stages, little things, just little, and you'll find this, even if you just go out there and say, what are the first stages to turning an idea into a concept? And, and it's like, why does this matter? Who is it that I want to target? What are the ways that I see going about that? What are the challenges that I face? And be very patient with all of this, because, right? But yeah, those are just a few quick things. And I could write a guide. I could do that and we could just post it. But having a trusted, because that tribe member number one is going to say, you know what, we should also bring tribe member number 2 and 3 into this. Yeah. So,
I have a lot of creative people on the podcast, and almost all of them say when we talk about the early days that their mom was their number one.
That's
the
not
podcasters.
Always, I don't know. Some, yes, does not have to be your mother.
The podcasters.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true in music, but of the podcasters or the authors, they always say that their mom was their very first and only fan. Maybe I was only talking to one person out there.
I think that's lovely. I don't know.
I bet you that's not true for music.
Well, actually, I think it's what it is community-based work. Because there's going to be some risk. There's going to be some testing, and moms don't always like to put their children at risk or disagree, or sort of contradict. Because there needs to be gentle contradiction. There inevitably will be. If you really want to realize a plan, you've got to have somebody who can do that with you. And maybe your mom can.
You know what? I'm going to throw something in here just that I've learned over all these years. I have 2 people that are not in my field at all that I met because they were in one owns one of the oldest TED licenses in the country. He's the owner of the TEDx Naperville, and he and I just became such good friends. We just were on the same weird creative vibe, and so we have met every Thursday at 9 a.m. since I did his TED conference in 2020, and we don't have that much in common. But we have everything in common in this one slice of time, and we improve each other's ideas. As you're saying, we just improve each other's ideas. And then I have another gal on Fridays I meet every 8 a.m. every Friday. She is the CEO of and the founder of one of the most successful nonprofits I've ever heard of, Healing Meals in the Hartford area. And again, we have almost nothing in common. We've never met for real, but we have met every Friday for probably 4 years at 8 a.m. And we just talk about and we bounce ideas. And she's a critic and I'm a critic, and we do it lovingly. And so I hope that people go away with this idea that there is, thanks for bringing that forward, that you need your first fan, and they have to be kind of a soft critic.
They do. They
Yeah,
do.
And that's kind of what I see you doing. I mean, I'm sure people come to you with ideas that,
oh yeah,
and they're open enough to be open to critique and wonder that somebody else might bring to what they've already thought, and that could take it to another level.
I don't know if people are familiar with this phrase, and it sounds very harsh, but it is true. We have a dear friend who's in the video editing and kind of the live TV world, but he talks about sometimes you have to kill your darlings. It sounds very harsh. It sounds terribly harsh. But for anybody that's edited a newsletter, right, or has to get a grant proposal down to 100, words, or is writing a speech, or is, writing an article for a journal with, word limits, or frankly, is designing a program. Sometimes those things that you really want to have in that program, but that everybody around you is saying, you know what, that's going to drive the program over the edge, or that doesn't really speak to, but you want it. It's your baby. It's your darling. That's the danger. That's the openness you have to have is just to what you're saying. To what you're saying. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what's the future of music to life? These are complex times. These are seriously complex times. This is being recorded in mid-March of 2025, if you're listening to it long in the future or recent. These are very complex times. But we've been through hard times before. I just read a book called The Unfinished Love Story by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Her husband was this is one of the most profound books if you're curious about the way the world works. Her husband was JFK's number one speechwriter, and Lyndon Johnson's, became best buddies with Jackie and Bobby Kennedy, and think all those, and was intimately involved in what happened with Martin Luther King's death. When you read about the 60s, it gives you perspective about our times, how far we've come, and how far we've got to go, left to go, and it circle back to the music aspect of this. Like, it would be easy to say, "Oh, there's no future in things as idealistic as you're talking about, Liz." It would be so easy to say that, and certainly there are the naysayers. But I don't see that. I see that you're on the edge of something magical for both artist, listener, and community. I mean, that's totally the three wins.
And we've had, this is my new, I love going to these kind of music conferences and music related conferences, because I talk to people about this and they're just like, wow. I mean, this notion of, of social impact, social entrepreneurism in music. And an artist, fairly successful artist, said to me just recently, this is the next frontier of kind of income generation for musicians. Because think about it, we talked about the industry a little earlier. Artists are making pennies, and they're not being signed to labels like they were, and they're making pennies from Apple, from Spotify, from Amazon Music, whatever it is. Touring is helpful, merchandise is helpful, but even the CD, that was such a beautiful thing for artists. They could bring their CDs. People could buy their CDs for like $20. It was such a great, they don't do CDs anymore. So their world is shrinking in terms of how they can make money. But if they are acting as these kind of social entrepreneurs, and they're sort of taking these issues that affect them and concern them and translate, pivoting and kind of translating those into these kind of tangible music driven programs that address issues of addiction, suicide prevention, domestic violence, whatever it is, that is now worthy of community attention, grant attention, what it earned income. We love it. People will hire them now, to produce these programs. So that is just generally speaking, that feels like the future. In terms of us, I mean, we're absolutely here to stay. I mean, we've been recognized by some of the most significant foundations already in this country, not the least of which was the Mellon Foundation, the largest arts and culture funder that recognized us when we were, double digit budget. I mean, when my bank account was $20,000 and they were like, oh, but we really think you're amazing. So, so now we're at $500,000 organization. In 3 to 5 years, we're aiming to be $1 million organization. And our goal, I mean, the reason we're growing like this is not just to grow. It's not just because, you're going to have money to grow, but because we see the need. We are addressing a need. We're addressing a need because artists keep coming to us and saying, can you please help us get into communities in the ways we've been talking about? But we also are seeing communities say, hey, you know what? I've got this. I don't know how to tackle the opioid crisis. This is true. This is a community outside of Las Vegas. Can you help me galvanize the independent musicians that are in our community? And can we do one of your themed, a boot camp that you do, like one of these 1-day incubators? Can we theme that around music driven responses to the opioid crisis? Not a benefit concert, not a piece of music, but like gathering these can we do that? So we're seeing that happen. We're seeing even folks like the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences say, you know what? There are 12 Grammy chapters in this country, maybe even more now. How do we embed this kind of training model so that we have this ability to kind of reach into community with our membership in a meaningful way, right? So there's a musical Peace Corps is something that I have kind of bandied about a little bit, but this is a concept that's definitely here to stay, Wow.
So what can the average person do? So how can we, first, let me ask one question. What do you need? Because, I'm promoting everybody I talk to on this podcast and that we write about. I mean, no shame. We need to elevate organizations like yours. Mm-hmm. So, and sometimes you just got to say what you need. What do you need next to take it to the next level? Liz, somebody listening to this interview might have a connection or might know how to get you there. What do you need next?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I have this saying, ask for money and you'll get advice. Ask for advice and you'll sometimes get money.
Yes.
So I would
funding
say,
is the limitation.
Funding is a need, but what I would say is we need we're ready to start building relationships is what I would say. So if you are we talked about this before. If you're a musician, if you're a community member who is like, I could see me going to, I'm a bank, I bank at this particular community bank. Their issue is the opioid or whatever, name your issue, right? I'm working in a school that has suicide. Talk to us about how to mobilize the musicians in your community to kind of address this. So come to us around that. You're a foundation, you're a larger entity, and you don't have the bandwidth to be able to reach down and kind of identify grassroots solutions, grassroots kind of creative music-based solutions. We can be your eyes and ears because we're in 42 states and growing, right? So those are just a few things. And then as I mean, we're doing a lot of consulting. We're working with a medical program right now to kind of integrate music-based kind of interventions into their residency training. Right? It's a division of family medicine, and they want to see how community-based kind of musical interventions are used because they want their residents, as they kind of visit with their patients, to have a sense of kind of music's capacity to, so So maybe you're working, maybe you're in an industry or a place that could use some kind of, maybe you're just, can music help me? I'm working in a space where we're trying to come up with creative solutions. Is there a music-based angle to a solution?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and we will put links to your connections, and so people can get a hold of you over on the Goodness Exchange.
Yeah, join the mailing list.
article.
Bottom line, definitely join the mailing list. Like that's
Okay.
just a bottom line, because we have
Got
music and stories, and like if you're at all interested in the kind of new music, progressive music that is really trying to be inclusive and shed light, right, and build these bridges. Join the mailing list.
Lovely.
For sure.
So I always end the podcast with a question. If this interview had only been 2 or 3 minutes, if somebody on a news wanted to finish up their news hour with something positive and they came to you and you got 2 or 3 minutes, what do you really wish people knew, Liz? Like, even you boil this, all the learning that has come to you through this, or all the possibility that is sitting there, untapped potential and so forth. What do you really wish people knew? I've interviewed people who see the suffering in the world and put it through their lens, and that's what kind of makes them get up in the morning. I know that's for me. When I see the suffering in the world, that I know is largely caused because people only know half the story on humanity. They don't know nearly enough about all the people like you. And there are millions and millions of people. Did you see the article recently in 7 Days about the phantom, the masked cowboy? There's some guy, could be a woman, running around Burlington, filling up potholes and putting mosaic art in the potholes when they fill up the potholes. And okay, there's some problems with that, because usually when the city guys come and look in the hole and they figure out why the hole is there, and they might. But anyway, what an idea, huh? To, in the middle of the night, go fill potholes that people could, have a bicycle accident on or whatever, and then put art on the top layer of it, of mosaic tiles.
So there you go, Linda. So I have the incredible fortune of coordinating and, directing, leading an organization that is constantly unearthing and facilitating profound innovations in the area of music-based change. So as you sleep, as you go about your daily work, know that there is an organization that is growing rapidly because of the artists that are coming to us saying, we want to be activated. We want to be ignited. We want to bring positive, bridge building, healing, change. Like that is happening right now. Like as everybody sleeps and goes about their days, right? Like we are here. We are not going anywhere. And we get to facilitate these visions that, that this creative community has. Like I'm so gifted. I feel so blessed to be able to.
And I imagine has it taught you that, for every problem there is a solutionary out there? Somebody who's not, who's like a revolutionary, but we, thanks to Zoe Weil, I'll put that interview in there. She calls them solutionaries, folks that are out there not being just visionary, but actually getting things done.
Completely.
I'm sure that you run around, you've seen so many, there must be many more.
There are many, many more. Yeah. And our planet, we will serve everyone if I have anything to do with it. Yeah. We'll be serving every single one.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for this chat. It took us a while to get it going. We were supposed to record yesterday and we had a technical difficulty on my end. So I just can't thank you enough. You're filled, my face is shaped kind of heart shaped because people like you make me smile so much. What you're doing is important to everyone's future, and we just can't thank you enough for finding what you're uniquely built to contribute, Liz.
Oh, Linda. Well, hey, thank you. You, not unlike the work we do, you are a facilitator and an engager, and you bring out to all your listeners people who are doing good in the world. So you have a really important role to play.
Well, I think that's my big takeaway message of this whole adventure that I've been on for 11 years, is that I believe that almost every human being has something they're uniquely built to contribute. And if you look at the circuitous way our lives work, maybe there's 1, 2, or 3 things in every person's life that can be brought together in something fresh. And then you're looking at the tuba player on the reservation who wants to bring marching bands to new heights. I mean, it's the beauty of humanity, is all these combinations that we walk around with and how we put them together.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I hope that the interview that you just listened to between Liz and I put a spring in your step. Look up Music to Life. What Liz is talking about is another way to control our worldview, to expand our worldview, to expand what we know is right about this world. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you, Linda. Really appreciate you.
Have a great day, everyone.